Good evening, everyone. Thank you for turning out on what we've been classed as the hottest day of the year so far. So, well done. You didn't all melt. Um, can I just remind councillors and staff and everyone that this is a public meeting. It is recorded and there is no public questions section in this meeting. Before I start, I'd just like to thank Katie and Anne Gibbons who did the briefing to us the other day. Unfortunately, I know, Chris, you had to work, but I personally found it very, very useful on a subject that is quite difficult to comprehend, and I think it made it much easier. So, thank you very much. Right, item 1, apologies for absence and substitutions.
Thank you, Chair. I have received an apology from Councillor Guglielmi with no substitutions.
Thank you very much. Item 2, minutes of the last meeting. Can I have a proposer and seconder? Yeah. Is there any comments on it or questions? Councillor Baker.
Chairman, just to say that I wasn't at the last meeting, wasn't on this committee, so I can't vote or say anything about them at all.
Any other comments on them? No? Do you all agree them? Yeah, thank you very much. Item 3, declarations of interest. Can I just remind councillors to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests either now or as and when we go through the agenda. Item 4, questions on notice pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 38.
Thank you, Chair. There are no questions.
Thank you. Item 5, report of the Assistant Director Partnerships A1 People Strategy, and it's on page 13 to 32 with the recommendations on page 13, and I believe that's Carol.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this report is to provide an update and revised strategy. We've had a people strategy in the past, and this is updated it quite considerably. We've kept the same format, which is following the employee life cycle. So we're looking at when people are joining, starting as it were, and then when they stay, and then obviously when people in due course leave the organisation. So it's divided into those three areas. It's been updated following the adoption of the Corporate Plan 2024-28, and it also sets out our approach, really wanting to become an employer of choice and to maintain that position within the district. It also sets out that we will follow required employment legislation and best practice, and it supports staff to enable them to perform their duties professionally and with confidence. One of the things that the strategy does recognise is the increasingly complex context in which we're working now within tendering. One of the things that was quite interesting when I was doing the revisions was noticing how much everything had changed, that we've moved much more to the use of IT. I mean, we're all sitting here now with our laptops. That wasn't the case in the previous people strategy that we had. Also, the increased use of flexible working and hybrid working, that's been a big change in the way in which we're working. And indeed, perhaps even more significant than those things is the increased working that we're doing in partnership. We have much closer alliances now with our fellow councils, particularly with Essex County Council and with other borough and district councils, and also with other significant partners, including with health, the police, and so on and so forth. So that has changed a lot. We have different types of ways in which people work for us. I think when I did the previous strategy, as I say, which is some years ago now, really we didn't have that many various types of contracts. We had people who were on casual contracts, we had temporary contracts, but now we have an awful lot more use of secondments. We make a lot more use of posts which are jointly funded with partners. We do a lot more when we have a post where somebody is employed by a partner agency, let's say for instance with a East Suffolk Health, but they might be based here with us in tendering. So we've got a lot more flexibility in the way in which we're maintaining and keeping our establishment. The majority obviously are still employed and contracted within tendering district council, but we do have a lot more variety variety of ways in which people are working with us. So this is trying to take account and take some recognition of that too. It's also recognising that we've got a much wider variety of ways in which learning and development is delivered. We've moved now to having much more use of webinars and also indeed with e-learning. And that is something that we didn't have in the last people strategy. So it was quite surprising, as I say, when I was going through it and thinking, oh, this will be a fairly light update. In actual fact, it was a much bigger piece of work than I'd first envisaged. But I think really that's the core hub of it. We've set out about what we mean about getting the basics right. We think those things are always absolutely fundamental. And early in the strategy, you'll see that sets out what the basics mean in terms of this context. As I said, we're using the main framework is still talking about employee life cycle, joining, staying and leaving, and then there's a number of subheadings within that. The adoption of this people strategy will set the focus and priorities for the next 5 years. That means it will run slightly past when the existing corporate plan is due to expire. That allows time for a new corporate plan to be developed before a new people strategy has to be developed. So as we've got that little bit of overlap there. And then I guess I come to the recommendation, and then I'll stop talking. So it's recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee endorses the adoption of the People Strategy 2024 to 2029.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions? No. Thank you. Thank you. Can I have a proposer, please? And a seconder? Everybody agree? Yep. Thank you. Are you staying or are you going? Yeah? Or running, yeah. Thank you. Right, item 6, report of the Assistant Director, Partnerships A2 Leave Policy. It starts on page 33, recommendations page 33, and I think that's Jo? Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much. The purpose of the report is to update the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee on the review of the Council's leave arrangements for employees following the implementation of our new exciting payroll and HR system and in line with best practice and changes in employment legislation. As a council, we're committed to developing and maintaining working arrangements that enable employees to achieve a better workplace balance. And annual leave and other types of leave are important elements in achieving a positive approach to work. The update of the policy incorporates the new provision for carers, which was actually introduced in 2024 in April. And I'll just go through that because it's quite fundamental what the changes that came. So the government introduced statutory time off. But it's unpaid, so it's 5 days unpaid. But what we wanted to recommend is actually the contribution that actually employees who are carers have on society and as our workforce. And what with recent study shows is that there's 3.7 million working carers in England and Wales. So what we wanted to do was actually go above what the statutory minimum is and actually introduce 5 days paid carers leave to actually recognise that we do have a lot of carers, and that will be sort of on a rolling 12-month period. So that's a key change to the leave policy. In addition, another change was the compassionate leave. The wording that we had was quite sort of outdated, I could say, and so we've tried to incorporate a sort of much wider wording to allow, because it's very, so it's been traditionally quite, siblings, parents, but we know that people have really close relationships with people that may not be blood relatives. So we've extended that. Other things that have changed as well due to case law, there was a lot of case law around the casual holiday. And we were very grateful there was a ruling recently, and we've been able to have rolled up holiday pay, so that's reflected in the policy, which makes it a lot easier for our casual workforce. Other changes in the policy have been related to our implementation of our new system. So what we've done, we haven't changed terms and conditions for staff, but instead of annual leave being recorded in days, we're now doing it in hours. This is a much more flexible arrangement. We've always done it for part-time staff, but this is a much more flexible arrangement for both full-time and part-time staff. And the other changes in the policies are it's quite minimal, sort of wording policies, but I think that's sort of the crux of it. So going back to the recommendation, it is recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee endorses and adopts the Council's updated leave arrangements for employees, and notes that the Human Resources team will be regularly monitoring, reviewing the policy's implementation and report to the Council Human Resources and Council Tax Committee as part of the future workforce reports. Saying that, I think what's important is, if we're introducing things, what is the take-up? Making sure they're consistently, adopted throughout the council, and we'll be reporting back to it, because we want them to be effective, we want them to be used. So thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Calder. Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I welcome this, and I think it's.
Sorry, I'm going to bring you up a bit closer.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. So I welcome this, and I believe it's good that the council is seeking to go over and above to provide further support to our excellent staff. I think, let's face it, we rely on our staff, we value our staff, and in a small way, this is the council showing that. And I very much welcome it.
Thank you very much. It's really, it's positive, and we can do small things, but I think to show that we do value our staff in this way is really important. So thank you.
Councillor Baker.
I must apologise. I've got more than one question, Chair. So, if you'll indulge me, I just noticed on page 41, 42 of the actual of the document that I've got. So, apologies if it's not the same on the printed version. But as you go down, it's in red, and it says there are various online calculators available for hours to decimals, including. And then it says the council's offices are closed between Christmas and New Year. I just wonder if there's either something not there, or there's a paragraph jumped or something. It seemed a bit confusing when I read it. So can I just have some clarity as to, is there meant to be anything else there, or is it just a paragraph that's out of place?
Sorry, can I answer that? Sorry, I do apologise. There was a link there. Every time we put it, it seemed to jump off the page. There was a link to, there's an online calculation. So I apologise. In the PDF version, I'd managed to keep it, but I think when we transferred it back to Word, it disappeared again. So I do apologise for that.
That's fine. I thought there might be a simple explanation. So if I can, Chair, can I just go down to paragraph 8, carrying over annual leave, which is on page 43, last but one paragraph. I'm going to ask the what-if question. So the what-if question is, if we have employees who have more than 5 days left, what do we do with them? And also, how do we make sure that our employees actually take their annual leave and don't leave it? So, in my previous life, I know people that didn't take annual leave for 3 years, and it had a devastating effect on their mental health. So if I could just have answers to those, please. Thank you.
Can I? Thank you. As we know, annual leave actually is part of the working time regulations, and it is a health and safety legislation, so it is very important. What we do is, obviously, we talk to managers about reminding them, and we do actually send regular reminders throughout the year to reminding staff to be taking their leave and the importance of it due to that health and safety. If staff, there are sometimes some reasons why staff don't take their leave. Obviously, if they're off long-term sick or whatever, then we would obviously allow them to sort of carry over more than that. But if obviously, we're working very closely with the managers to ensuring that staff are taking it throughout the year. And as I said, we do remind them of that.
Thank you for that, Chair, if I may. Paragraph 11, which is compassionate leave. I'm glad we've got it in there. I must admit that 3 days doesn't seem a lot, but I suppose immediately that's what we want, so they don't have to worry about work. Is there a maximum? Is the question of, obviously, if you know, you do have somebody that has devastating news or one of these reasons, and I'll go on to the bit about child loss or stillbirth, because I've got a comment on that. Is there a maximum that we allow compassionate leave, which will be paid, I'm presuming, until somebody decides it can't be?
We don't have a maximum. I mean, I think we deal with everybody on a case-by-case basis. What we tend to find, and, you know, sadly, we've had staff who've lost children and who've had, you know, very sad bereavement, you know, very specific, you know, sudden deaths. What we do find is people tend to actually go off sick if it goes on for longer. But obviously we're, you know, very sensitive, and it's very case by case. We don't sort of, as the letter of the law, say this is exactly, and we work very closely with the managers, occupational health, to decide, you know, what support they need. Sometimes, you know, we work with people, sometimes doing a little bit of work helps, so we will look at sort of maybe some flexible working. It very much depends on the circumstances, but we will keep in that sort of close communications to see what's appropriate.
Thank you for that, it's reassuring. And I'll shut up after this one, which is somewhere, paragraph 16, jury service. I've never done it. I know, I probably haven't missed anything at all. I went plenty of times in a previous life. Just about the... No. Please ensure they claim from the court for loss of earnings, as this amount will be deducted from their salary. So when our staff unfortunately have to do jury service, either at Ipswich or Chelmsford, the maximum they can claim is £64.95, because I looked it up. So are we saying that that's all they can claim? Because the Crown Court sort of give a guidance as that's it.
No, we'll encourage them to claim, but obviously the staff, that's their public duty, and we'll obviously be encouraging people to do their public duty. Very, very rarely will we ever get involved in saying it's not, you know, it's not a good time, because we really think it's important that people do that. So staff will not, you know, lose out at all by attempting to do jury service.
No, but I think you may have missed the point I was trying to make. So obviously if they go, it says they must claim from the court for loss of earnings. So I made the presumption that we actually send them and they're getting full pay, but they're going to get £64.95 deducted because they've claimed that. Because that's the maximum. I mean, that's not loss of earnings. That's just not enough, in my view, to cover loss of anybody's earnings. Yeah, it's a token payment. And £5.71 for lunch doesn't get you a lot, does it? So I just wondered how it worked. And I appreciate they're going to go. It's their public duty. They don't get a choice. You can't get out there more than once. Most of the time, but I just, you know, the amount for the loss of earnings gets deducted from their salary. So is it they're on full pay and then they get deducted whatever they claim? That's it. That's the answer I wanted. Thank you.
It's a simple answer. Yes.
Thank you. Would it not be better to put something like that in that paragraph? Because I'm questioning the same. If they're only going to get £64, but they earn more than that, you know, you're going to read that and think, actually, we're going to lose money. How can I get out of doing jury service? Is there any way that that can be written into that paragraph? To give them a bit more confidence and security, really.
Yeah, I think, thank you. I think that's a good point, and we'll update that wording. So thank you.
Chairman, if I just may, that was only up to 2 weeks. So my worry is that we would lose a member of staff for up to 6 months, potentially, depending on the trial that they might get involved in. Obviously, there's a higher amount you can claim, so maybe it just needs to be worded in a better way, maybe. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take that back. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? No? Can I have a proposal then, please?
Quite happy to.
Seconder, Chris? And do you all agree? Thank you. Right, item 7, report of the Assistant Director Partnerships, A3, Workforce Update Report. And I think that's Joe again, is it? Get a quick swig of a drink. And your recommendation on that one is on page 50.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. It's all included in here, so I'll only briefly go on what I believe are the highlights, so if that's all right. Obviously, this analysis of the workforce data provides members with the statistics relating to staff employed within the council and looking at sort of national figures. This is a report that's provided to the HR, the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee periodically. What I would like to say is, with our new, very exciting, HR and payroll system, we're quite excited that in future reports, we will have a lot more data that we will be able to provide. So this is this is a bit of a sort of hybrid of looking at the data we had from our previous system and our new system, and we are actually still trying to get our heads around what our new system can provide. But I think we would welcome we're going to be working with management team and yourselves to work out what statistics and stuff you want us to be able to provide to the committee, and we will reflect that. Just another sort of proviso is that what we've done is some of the data that we had in the old system, we haven't automatically transferred over to the new system. So things like self-reporting that we're asking our staff to give us on their equality data, we decided that the categories in the old system weren't up to date, appropriate, weren't wide enough, so we decided not to transfer that information. So we are now in a system where we're actually encouraging their staff through their employee self-service angles, that's where they get their pay slips, to actually self-declare. So what you're finding in the report, is that it's probably it's quite significantly under-declared in certain areas because we know that hasn't had the opportunity to encourage them. But just the highlights that I'd just like to point out is, obviously, we've got a workforce of 752, of which 575 are fully contracted staff. We've got 14 apprentices, which is lovely, and we've got 164 staff who are engaged on a casual basis. Of our workforce, we've got 437 female and 315 that are male, so quite an even split. This is encouraging statistics that shows we've got quite an equal gender balance, and it demonstrates the council's employment support for families and individuals' work-life balance. We've also got quite a few family-friendly policies and practices, which we're, hope, that we will constantly review to ensure that they're meeting the needs of our staff. Age profile. Interestingly, the highest proportion of our staff falls in with the 51 to 60 age brackets. The next highest age range is 21 to 30, and that's closely followed by 41 to 50-year-olds. So we have got maybe sort of something we need to work around with succession planning and stuff like that to ensure that we have got a workforce to continue. Of disability profile, only 9 we've got self-declared that they have a disability, but as I said, I think that's quite significantly underreported, and what I will be looking to doing over the coming months is to reminding staff to report if they've got a disability, and it's visible, non-visible, and encouraging staff to do that. But we are, as a disability confident leader status, and we are looking to sort of retain that status in the autumn. Ethnicity profile, again, I think this is underreported. We've documented we've got 9 people who've declared themselves as ethnic origin other than white British, and that's compared to 6.5% of the residents. I think I'd like to do more work in this area, because for me, what's important is the roles that people are, have holding in those posts, and to make sure that we have got people working at all sort of levels throughout the council. Sickness, we've got 7.88 days absence per employee, which, although is slightly higher than the national average, it is actually about in par with what is average for public sector. But obviously we're working on that, and we're supporting our employees through earlier interventions like stress risk assessments, if it's when we're trying to sort of promote sort of healthy living. The team has just got involved in this walking challenges. We've been promoting stuff through Essex. We've got the employee assistance program and so forth. We've got corporate gym membership, which obviously discounted. Obviously, we've got quite a lot of facilities around, and we've sort of but we're continuing to look what sort of support we can put in place. So that's all my highlights, I think. The recommendation to the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee is that the contents of the report be noted. So, thank you.
Thank you. Casey, I think you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to bring members' attention to the item in the report that talks about those members of staff that are currently studying. I know that I've spoken to you previously about our Grow Our Own arrangements, and those qualifications, that formal learning and our apprenticeships are really important in terms of our succession planning arrangements, and also that growing our own on that basis. So just to highlight that over the last 12 months we've got officers who have been working towards achieving degrees in chartered housing, chartered surveying, chartered management, digital and technology solutions, accountancy, building control and planning. And those professional and technical areas, they are areas that we struggle in terms of recruiting or retaining staff. So it's really important that we have a focus on those professional and technical areas. Obviously the examples that are given in the report are not exhaustive, but it just gives a flavour of the work that's been undertaken by Carol in particular in terms of learning and development and our training provision, but it's really important in terms of that succession planning. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to highlight, mainly because we are being recorded and the public are listening, is that the terms female and male throughout this report refers to how individuals have identified themselves. I think with everything that's going on, that's quite important to highlight that. Thank you.
Just one. It was mentioned that you've got this new system and what we'd like to see as a committee. The numbers of episodes absent reasons, I think going forward, if I remain on this committee, I'd like to know how many of that is actually related to work. So injuries at work, I don't know, one of our open spaces falling off a tractor for argument's sake or whatever it might be, just so that we can show what our work absences due to work rather than absences due to an illness that has come on. Thank you.
Councillor Stevenson.
Following on from that, Andy, if employees have an accident at work or are off because of work, does that count towards their sort of sick absence, and then further down the line if they go sick again, towards their conduct code and things like that, because it's a work issue as opposed to a personal issue because it's happened at work?
It's counted for their sickness, yes. However, thinking of triggers, obviously when we're sort of managing sickness absence, there's lots of things we take into consideration. So we would actually look at all sorts of things to see obviously if there's underlying health conditions, looking at sickness, and we don't look things at, we're not sort of council that just says, right, you've had this, and we go through a process. That's not how we work. So everything is taken into consideration. But we would, it would be recorded in the same way, but it would be flagged that it is due to, and also thinking about, for us, we work very closely, the HR team, with the health and safety team, and if there is accidents at work, I mean, obviously, sadly we have incidences of where people, and we work, to see whether they're prevented it, and working to see, and we work with our unions as well. So it's we use that data to be very proactive to see what we can do, because that's the last thing we want people to happen.
The viral numbers are high, and I know, I'm going to say particularly probably with the age group we employ, especially if they've got children at school, they're going to constantly keep coming home with colds and everything else. But do you find there's, or is it something you monitor that somebody might, you know, once a fortnight go off with upset stomachs or something? Because it's a very difficult one to prove, isn't it?
I think yes. I mean, usually when we have our first stage sickness absence meetings, we'll talk to people about the reasons that for absence. And if there is, you know, patterns, sometimes you see patterns as well. And that's why it's very dangerous to just say you've had, you know, we do have sort of triggers, but you're also looking at patterns and reasons. And it might be somebody is particularly run down. And I think what we need to look at is there something that if, you know, it's hard, isn't it, to look at the genuine absence and the ones that isn't, but we do have an occupational health support, and if we're very keen to refer people to that to identify if there is any underlying, if there is, you know, genuine reasons or maybe not so genuine and people use. But I think to be fair to our employees, I think once you highlight, sometimes a lot of the times they don't realise, and I think sometimes people don't understand that it's their absence, it's their sickness, it's not a child's got a viral infection, you know, and so we do find that as well. And it's only when you have those first informal meetings that you can actually, that some people generally don't know that that's what it should be, and they're actually reporting for what their child or somebody they're caring for. And that's why I think it's so important we do have a carers provision, so that people can clearly see that actually there is something, if they've got caring responsibilities, they need to take carers leave, but actually what they need to do for their own sickness. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more questions? Can I have a proposer and a seconder then, please? Gemma? Is this one for noting? Or? Oh, yep, sorry, the report is for noting. Sorry, don't need all that bit. Sorry, Gemma. Item 8 is report the Assistant Director Partnerships A4 Market Forces Policy Update Report. Starts at page 59, recommendations are on page 60, and I think that's you, Katie.
Thank you, Chair. So the purpose of the report is to present the revised discretionary market forces policy. And I'd just like to obviously reassure members that the Council is committed to the principles of equal pay for work of equal value. And this principle is obviously supported by our use of the National Job Evaluation and Grading Scheme. But members will also be aware that there may be exceptional circumstances, and particularly due to labour conditions, and I know I've spoken about those previously, where the evaluated grade results in the job is graded correctly, but the labour market conditions mean that actually the pay, if we benchmark it, does not fit with the market value. So in these exceptional circumstances, it's appropriate for consideration to be given to a market forces supplement to overcome the problem. And the Council views market forces supplements as risk and retention payments, and that's in that it provides an incentive to our employees in critical roles with a view to retaining these highly skilled staff and compensating them accordingly in terms of market conditions. And I'd just like to reassure the committee that payment of market factor supplements is very common across local government, and the National Joint Council recognises that this is a significant issue, there is a requirement for this, and they provide very comprehensive guidance on the application of these payments. Members will also recall that the committee had asked for officers to engage the services of the East of England LGA to look at our pay structure. So previously we asked them, or the committee asked them, to look particularly at those roles where market forces supplements are applied, but we then expanded that piece of work at the committee's request, and we asked them to look at the whole of our pay structure, and including sort of chief pay, and again, those roles where market forces supplements are applied, just to make sure we're still getting it right. So in terms of that benchmarking, ELGA did that independent piece of work, and they used our neighbouring authorities at district level and regionally to look at what the pay levels were, and also where others apply market forces supplements too. So I'm very pleased to report to members that that benchmarking data has indicated that for the majority of roles, they're paid at a level which is comparative with other authorities in terms of the East of England region. So that's really good news. There are a number of exceptions to that, and I'll talk about those in a moment. But just thinking about our pay structure and the fact that the benchmarking has identified that generally it aligns, that does meet our experience of recruitment and retention. So although the council has a number of vacancies currently, it generally, we are getting a really good response to our job adverts and to our, when we recruit generally. So that's really positive. So ELGA has also confirmed that in terms of market forces, we're applying them in the right way, which is good, and to the appropriate jobs in terms of their, what they've identified. Although they have suggested, they've made a number of sort of recommendations in terms of their conclusions, and they've suggested that to ensure that we remain competitive in a job market, there may be situations where we have to have greater flexibility in terms of the application of market forces supplements, and that will always be driven by the benchmarking exercise. So whereas at the moment our market forces policy allows 2 salary points in terms of additional temporary payment to be applied, we are saying, in the revised policy, that there's an opportunity to expand that should that comparison data dictate that we need to do that up to the equivalent of 1 grade. It will all be very data driven, so we won't be applying that flexibility unless needed. And also, one of the other findings that ELGA reported was that in most authorities, members will agree the policy position in terms of market forces supplements, and then decisions regarding the application of payments and market forces supplements are delegated to officers, but with regular audit to a HR committee, so that obviously members have sight of those payments that are applied across the authority. So the policy has been revised based on these findings, and members will find sort of key changes that have been applied in the executive summary of your report pack, and that's on pages 59 and 60. I'd just like to read the recommendations, if I may, Chair, because I think it's really important. So therefore, it is recommended that the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee approves and adopts the Council's updated discretionary market forces policy, noting the incorporated change in the approval process for future market forces requests, including the proposed delegation afforded to the Head of Paid Service in consultation with the Assistant Director, Partnerships, and the Chair and Vice.
Thank you. I'm going to come straight in because I think when we were chatting about this, we made the decision between the committee that we didn't just want it to be the chair and vice chair. It had to go to the whole committee as well. So, sorry, do you want to come?
I thought what we said, that was in terms of advising the committee. I thought what we said was we were happy with that proposal for speeding up the decision-making process, but we didn't like the idea of the committee only being advised once a year.
Yes, that's right.
Committee, as chair, that will be shared for information purposes. But you and Gary will be part of the decision-making process in consultation with the head of paid service and the assistant director of partnerships.
Okay, if I get this round the right
Sorry,
way.
Stephanie,
No,
I've
no,
got-
that's fine. Basically, where it says partnerships and the chair and vice chair of the human resources, is that we, the chairman, myself, and Councillor Culver as vice chairman, will be part of the decision making, but the information will be passed round to the whole committee, rather as it is done basically, because we didn't feel that yearly, once a year, you can't debate it or anything. Then can you? Councillor Baker.
Then, Chairman, should we add something to the recommendation to cover that? Because obviously, I think that I'm fine with it as it is, but maybe just an extra line, and that at the end, say, and that information be passed to the members of the committee for information purposes only, or something similar.
Yeah. Councillor Amos, did you want to say something? No, sorry. I've got Katie's busy typing that in at the moment. So do you all agree that that part is put in as part of the recommendation? Okay. Is there any questions? Any more questions on this? Can I have a proposer then, please? Gemma can... and Andy.
Agreed.
Okay.
So can you just read out the added bit at the end, maybe?
So recommendation B is now.
Right, notes that the Human Resources team will keep a register of market supplements in payment, and this will be reported to the Council's Human Resources and Council Tax Committee on an annual basis to ensure
Sorry, Chair. A, it is under A. Apologies.
Can we please ignore that bit I've just read out? We're changing. Which bit are we?
So it's
Right, approves and adopts the Council's updated discretionary market forces policy, noting the incorporated change in the approval process for future market forces requests, including the proposed delegation afforded to the head of paid service in consultation with the Assistant Director, Partnerships and the Chair and Vice Chair of the Human Resources and Council Tax Committee, and that information will be passed to the committee for information purposes. Okay? Yeah? Thank you. Do I need a proposer for that change first?
As I mentioned it, I suppose it should be me.
Okay. Gemma, are you happy to second that? Right. And does everyone agree? Great. Thank you very much. Right, thank you very much. 8:15, is that everything? Yeah. Thank you. And your next meeting is on Thursday the 17th of October, where I'm sure it'll be a little bit cooler.
Yes, I'm sure.
Thank you.